Look, whenever the topic of border policies or immigration enforcement comes up, things usually get, well, super emotional and deeply political. But today on The Explainer, we're literally tossing all of that out the window. We're going to look strictly at the hard, objective data. Based on some absolutely fascinating recent research, we're going to examine exactly what happens to local economies, everyday businesses, and American workers when immigration enforcement is significantly tightened. So settle in, because the numbers here tell a story that might completely flip how you understand the basic mechanics of the U.S. labor market.
We're going to quickly map out the National Bureau of Economic Research data through 5 key areas: the immigration enforcement study, the labor chilling effect, did Americans gain jobs, the complementary labor market, and finally, the economic ripple effect. Okay, you have definitely heard this statement before. Stricter immigration enforcement opens up jobs for local workers. It is essentially the central claim behind tightening the border, right? The idea is that if you remove undocumented workers, you create this vacuum that local, US-born workers just naturally rush in to fill. And on the surface, it sounds completely logical. Less competition obviously means more opportunity. But as we'll see, surface-level logic doesn't always hold up when you really put it under a microscope. Let's see what happens when the hard data puts this exact hypothesis to the test.
Section 1. The Immigration Enforcement Study.
So what exactly are we looking at here? Well, the study meticulously tracked ICE arrests right alongside worker-level labor market outcomes during the second Trump administration, specifically spanning 2023 to 2025. And what makes this NBR study so incredibly robust is how they did it. Instead of just looking at massive, vague national averages, they zoomed way, way in. They tracked uneven regional enforcement, basically comparing areas that saw sharp spikes in ICE arrests against areas with much lower activity. By linking that highly localized enforcement data directly to what individual workers were doing, they were able to isolate the true, on-the-ground economic impact of the policy. Section 2. The labor chilling effect. Now, this right here is wild. The data reveals a staggering micro-narrative. For every single ICE arrest, about 6 undocumented workers just stopped going to work, simply due to the fear of enforcement. So the impact goes way, way beyond just the individuals who are directly detained. The researchers call this a chilling effect. When enforcement ramps up in an area, fear spreads like wildfire through those communities. People essentially decide that the risk of just showing up for their Tuesday shift is way too high, which creates this immediate, severe shock to the local labor supply. And this chilling effect led to a sustained 4% drop in employment and total hours worked among undocumented immigrants, particularly men, across some really foundational pillars of our physical economy. We're talking agriculture, construction, manufacturing, and wholesale. Now, a 4% drop might not sound earth-shattering at first, but think about it. That doesn't just mean a couple of empty desks. It means crops are literally sitting there, not getting harvested, assembly lines are slowing to a crawl, and major construction projects get indefinitely delayed. And since men account for the vast majority of ICE arrests, the data showed this decline was heavily, heavily concentrated among the male workforce in these specific sectors. Section 3. Did Americans gain jobs? So here is the million-dollar question. With all those foundational workers suddenly missing from the job site, did it create new openings for the US-born workforce? Well, the study found absolutely zero meaningful increase in employment or hours for US-born workers. Zero. That initial assumption we talked about, completely shattered. You'd totally expect that firms would experience a massive labor shortage, panic a bit, and raise wages to attract local workers, right? But no, that is not what the reality of the data shows. Employers did not raise pay. Instead of paying a premium to shift those roles to local workers, firms simply slashed their hiring across the board. The overall demand for labor just dropped. Actually, scratch that. It's worse than just not getting jobs. The data rules out any positive spillover and shows that American workers in these immigrant-heavy sectors were actively harmed by the policy. This is, without a doubt, the most surprising finding in the entire study. Not only did US-born workers fail to gain new jobs, but certain demographics actually lost their livelihoods. Specifically, US-born men with a high school education or less who worked in these sectors saw their employment numbers take a real hit. Stricter enforcement didn't somehow hand those jobs over to them. It just eliminated the jobs entirely. Section 4. The complementary labor market. To really wrap our heads around why this economic contraction happened and why American workers lost out, the study introduces a concept that completely redefines how we view the job market. They explain that the labor market is absolutely not a zero-sum game because these different groups of workers actually perform complementary roles that keep the whole operation running. Think of a business like a massive, complex machine with all different types of gears. Immigrant workers and US-born workers usually aren't competing to be the exact same gear. One might be the gear turning the raw materials on the floor, while the other is the gear managing the logistics or operating the heavy machinery. They are complementary. You need both gears for the machine to even turn on. If you yank one set of gears out, you don't just magically replace them with the other set. The entire machine grinds to a halt.
Section 5. The economic ripple effect.
Let's walk through exactly how this domino effect plays out because it's a devastating chain reaction for local businesses. Step 1. That chilling effect kicks in and undocumented workers stay home out of fear. Step 2. Because the business now lacks the foundational labor to maintain its regular outputs, the owners are backed into a corner and forced to scale down their overall operations. Step 3. Well, a smaller operation requires fewer managers, fewer delivery drivers, fewer admin staff, meaning labor demand drops for literally all types of workers. And finally, step 4. US-born workers who held those complementary roles lose their jobs because the business itself has structurally shrunk.
The NBER researchers made a point to note that this isn't just a temporary blip or an isolated event. As information about arrests spreads rapidly, and believe me, community networks are highly efficient, the chilling effect compounds. It builds steadily over time, leading to a long-term contraction of the entire regional economy. The data is crystal clear here. Regional areas with the largest increases in ICE arrests saw the most severe employment declines. The ultimate takeaway? Aggressive enforcement doesn't mysteriously redistribute economic opportunity. It actively contracts it. It shrinks the pie for literally everyone involved. So, to wrap up this explainer, the data leaves us staring at a really crucial question. If removing undocumented workers forces critical businesses in agriculture, manufacturing, and construction to permanently scale back, what is the long-term game plan for these vital industries? Are they going to automate? Will they be forced to relocate? Or are we simply going to have to accept a permanently contracted economy? The numbers show us exactly what's happening on the ground right now, but how this reshapes our industrial base in the years to come, well, that's a question we're all going to have to answer. Thanks for hanging out with me on The Explainer today.